All right, in-season Nevada here, going over shore fishing opportunities, 5 lakes that I have personally caught fish at from the shore before I had access to a boat, and 2 bonus opportunities that I'm aware of but have not personally fished. We got this idea to host this video because of comments that were left on our previous video, which was the April-May Lake Mead, Lake Mojave fishing report, where I do fish from a boat. And so it can be a little bit difficult for some people to take that advice if they are not fishing from a boat. So this video was derived from comments. So if you have a comment, please leave it down below because it could inspire us to make another video. All right, with that being said, let's get into the first lake, which is Lake Mead. I think Lake Mead is definitely going to be the most talked about shore fishing opportunity in Nevada as a whole, simply because of its proximity to Las Vegas. It's only about a 30-minute drive from downtown Henderson to get to Boulder Beach, which is the first fishing opportunity you need to be aware of at Lake Mead. Boulder Beach has 2 sections. There is a swimming only section and there is a small watercraft section where you are allowed to launch kayaks and canoes and other flotation devices. So that section of the beach you can fish on, and there's even a fishing pier there, which will allow you to get just a little bit further, a little bit deeper out into the lake. A couple other areas are the 33 hole, but generally speaking, anywhere you can hike into get shore access will hold fish between the months of July and October. The reason is these fish are in their peak feeding from July through October, so you're going to have stripers and catfish out there cruising the shorelines looking for food opportunities. So if you're fishing in a spot and it's not producing, consider going back to that spot in between those months from July to October and see if that spot produces. I bet it will. A couple of techniques that are going to be more effective from shore is to fish at night, target striper or catfish with cut bait. Striper and catfish will eat a variety of different cut baits, anywhere from anchovies, shrimp, squid, chicken liver, chicken hearts, hot dogs. I mean, you name it. If you can cut it up and put it on a hook and it is edible, they will most likely eat it, especially at night. Doesn't mean you have to fish all night long to catch fish. For example, if sunset is at 8 o'clock, I would personally fish from the hours of 7 o'clock all the way to about 10 o'clock. And those are probably going to be your peak feeding hours in the sunset. And in the morning, I would fish a couple hours before the sun rises, and then that hour and a half to 2 hours after the sun rises. And that'll give you your best odds of success when fishing for both striper and catfish. All right, moving on to the second lake, which in my opinion is the most underrated fishing opportunity in the state of Nevada, and that is Cummins Lake. I've done a couple of videos on it in the past, and we will do another video on Cummins Lake in this year, in this season. So make sure you subscribe to check out that video. All right. You can catch fish at Cummins Lake by walking the shoreline edges. Pretty much every section of the lake is accessible legally, but there is a lot of brush that can hinder you when you are walking. So you will have to find openings in between the brush to find some casting opportunities. But don't be disappointed. With pretty much one lure, you can catch the following 3 species. You can catch trout, bass, and pike using trout spinners. I say trout spinners, all they are is little pieces of metal with a hook on it practically. That's pretty much a trout spinner. You can look them up, and you know, if you don't know what they are, go to your nearest bait store. Hey, what's a trout spinner? And people show you where they're at. The reason why Cummins Lake is an underrated fishing opportunity is for 2 main reasons. Temperature and reputation. The temperature of Cummins Lake is about 15 degrees to 20 degrees cooler. The air temperature is going to be about 15 to 20 degrees cooler than in Las Vegas. So if you are looking to escape the heat, it's a great place to go. Now, it is a bit of a journey. It's about a 4.5-hour drive, and it's 15 minutes from Ely, Nevada, which actually makes it a very convenient location to camp. And if you want to go to lunch, you've got Ely, Nevada nearby, so you can always get some food and use some amenities. So It is a great lake for families. Now, I talked about reputation of the lake. When pike were introduced into the lake, and I use the phrase introduced because, there's a lot of conspiracy theories on why there are pike in the lake. I'm not going to go into that in this video. But pike were introduced in the lake, and pike do eat trout along with largemouth bass. And so, because that lake was a amazing trout fishery, a lot less people fish there now than in the past. But people do eat a lot of the trout in that lake. So consider the fact that because there's less fishing pressure, there's an amazing amount of fish that have not been, desensitized to lures. So it is a great place to bring kids and to catch a lot of fish. If you want to eat the fish out of Cummins Lake, consider the fact that it does have high mercury levels. So I would avoid eating reproducing fish in the lake like bass and pike. Cummins Lake does have a sign, and they do ask you to kill the pike. You can simply kill them and leave them on shore, and the coyotes will eat them. If you want to eat fish, eat the trout, because the trout do grow in captivity up to about 10 inches long. And so their exposure to mercury is significantly less than bass and pike. Just consider, if you are going to eat trout from the lake, that you limit it in your diet and you're not eating trout every single day, and you should be fine. But again, always read whatever the most modern report is and the most up-to-date report from the Nevada Department of Wildlife before you consume any fish, and do not take this as a recommendation at all. Okay, with all that disclosure being said, let's move on to the third lake. Echo Canyon is a fairly clean lake and does not have a reputation for mercury like Cummins Lake. The reason why I have this third on the list is because it is going to give you an opportunity to escape the heat, but not quite as much as Cummins Lake. Typically, the Echo Canyon area is around 10 to 15 degrees cooler than Las Vegas instead of 15 to 20 degrees. So a little bit of relief, but not quite as much. It is, however, a closer drive. Being an hour drive south from Ely, Nevada, it takes about 3 hours to get there instead of about 4.5. So consider that as a benefit when it comes to Echo Canyon. A couple of the downfalls, though, is because it is a cleaner lake and it is more convenient, it is also going to be more heavily pressured. And so you will find a lot of other people fishing the lake. However, there is an abundance of shoreline at the lake because it is a reservoir for agriculture, which means in the springtime, the lake does fill up from snowmelt. And during the summer, fall, and winter, it is drawn down, giving you exposure to new habitat constantly throughout the season. And those fish are looking for the edges of habitat that exists around the shoreline in order to find new feeding opportunities. So you can catch quite a few fish from Echo Canyon. You can catch trout, bass, and crappie, all with a small white rubber grub. And I've personally caught all three of these species. And all the species that I've talked about so far on this list from shore personally, because I used to fish from shore as well. All right, the fourth fishing opportunity is going to be in central Nevada. This is going to be Mason Valley Wildlife Management Area. There's an abundance of shore fishing opportunities. I think there's like 4 different reservoirs that you can fish. There's more reservoirs, and some of them are closed to fishing for bird nesting habitat. And so make sure you read the rules and regulations, and you do not access sections of the management area that you're not allowed to access during the fishing season. With that being said, you can catch trout, bass, and catfish from the shore, and I have done it. I've primarily caught trout and bass with trout spinners, like I mentioned at Cummins Lake. And you can catch the catfish with either rubber worms or live worms. Now, some of the ponds do not allow you to use live bait. And so make sure that if you are at a specific pond, you are using the correct lure based on the regulations that are posted. All right, Pyramid Lake, probably the best fishing opportunity in northern Nevada. So both Mason Valley and Pyramid Lake are within a 2-hour drive from Reno. Now, it depends on which section of the habitat you were trying to access, because Each one of those have closer sections and further away sections, but generally speaking, you can access habitat within an hour's drive or an hour and a half drive from Reno, Nevada. Trout spinners are going to be your best bet for catching the maximum number of fish at Pyramid Lake. However, they are going to reduce your casting length compared to the technique that I used. And so you may want to consider grabbing yourself a pair of waders and a ladder, walking that ladder out to where the drop-off is, and then casting towards the drop-off. That's going to give you the best access for the maximum number of fish that could be looking at your lure that you might be able to catch. But the technique that I used, because I did not have a ladder and I did not have waders at the time, was I tied on a spoon that I usually use down here off my boat for fishing for striper. And what I would do is I'd stand on the shoreline and I'd launch that spoon as far as I could cast it using an ocean casting rod. And then I would reel it in as fast as possible. And I caught 2 big trout using that technique, about a 4 or 5 pound trout, and then about a 13 or 14 pound trout. So you can catch some significant fish from the shore, just depending on whatever technique you want to use. All right, going into the later section of this video, these are fisheries that I have not personally fished from shore, but they are shore fishing opportunities that are in Nevada that I do want to talk about. The first one is going to be Frenchie and Nesbitt Lake. Apparently, the bluegill are abundant in those lakes, and you can catch them with small white grubs, just like in Echo Canyon. The benefit of Nesbitt and Frenchie Lake is they are only about a 2-hour drive from Las Vegas versus a 3 or 4.5 hour drive from Las Vegas, like some of the other sections of habitat that I mentioned. But also consider that the further you go from Las Vegas, the cooler it gets. So you will have a little bit of relief from the heat, but maybe only from 5 to 10 degrees. Not too significant, but it is something, and it's better than nothing. Paranagit, you can actually catch catfish and carp with cut bait. Both species are abundant in Paranagit. Now, Paranagit does have some day use areas, and so make sure that you are following all of the regulations on the wildlife refuge, because I do not believe you're allowed to camp overnight at Paranagit, but don't quote me on that because I haven't been there in quite a while. So you can fish from those day use areas from what I understand, and catfish and carp are readily abundant and easy to catch. And that's in the very similar proximity to Frenchie Lake and Nesbitt Lake. So with that being said, appreciate you for watching this video. Make sure you comment down below. Your comments are answered typically in video format, and so they do trigger us to have new ideas for videos, and so that's what helps create this community. So please give us your feedback, give us a like, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.